Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that nearly everything you own belongs to someone else. Your home isn't really yours. The land isn't yours. Even part of the food you grow must be handed over to a lord you've probably never spoken to. There are no weekends, no vacations, no retirement. Just work. Day after day, year after year. For millions of medieval peasants, this wasn't a nightmare. It was simply life. Today, we're stepping back nearly 1,000 years to discover what life was really like for the ordinary people who made up the vast majority of medieval Europe. And while movies often show kings, knights, and castles, the real story belongs to the peasants who kept society alive. Long before dawn, the peasant household begins to stir. The room is dark, except for the faint glow of dying embers from last night's fire. A family of 6 or 7 may sleep in a single room. Parents, children, and sometimes grandparents share the same cramped space. The floor is dirt. The walls are rough timber, coated with mud. The roof is made from straw and reeds. When it rains heavily, water often finds its way inside. The smell of smoke lingers constantly, because many homes have no proper chimney. Breakfast is simple. A piece of dark bread, perhaps leftover porridge, sometimes weak ale. Water was common, but ale was preferred, not just because it was safer, but because it provided the vital calories needed for a hard day's labor. There is little conversation. Everyone knows what awaits them. Another long day in the fields. Most medieval peasants did not own the land they worked. Instead, they lived within a system known as feudalism. At the top were kings and nobles. Below them were knights, and, at the bottom, were peasants. A peasant family might cultivate several strips of farmland scattered around the village, but part of every week had to be spent working directly on the lord's land. This labor wasn't optional, it was an obligation. If the lord needed fields plowed, fences repaired, or roads maintained, peasants were expected to do the work. Refusal could result in punishment, fines, or even expulsion. To modern eyes, it may seem unfair, but for medieval people, it was simply the natural order of society. Most believed that God had assigned everyone a place in life. Some were born to rule. Others were born to work. Work begins shortly after sunrise. The tasks depend on the season. Spring means plowing and planting. Summer brings endless weeding and haymaking. Autumn is harvest season. Winter focuses on repairs and survival. Almost every task requires physical effort. Fields are worked by hand or with simple wooden tools. Animals help when available, but many families cannot afford them. A single mistake during planting or harvest can mean hunger later in the year. There are no tractors, no fertilizers, no machines. Everything depends on muscle. Men, women, and children all contribute. Even young children are expected to help, gathering firewood, scaring birds away from crops, looking after animals. Everyone has a role, because survival depends on it. Contrary to popular belief, peasants did not constantly eat meat. For most families, meat was a luxury. The foundation of the medieval diet was bread. Large quantities of bread, often made from rye, barley, or oats. Porridge was equally common. Vegetables such as onions, cabbage, beans, and turnips filled much of the daily menu. On good days, there might be cheese, eggs, or fish. Meat usually appeared during festivals, holidays, or special occasions. Food shortages were common. A poor harvest could push entire villages towards starvation, and famine was never far away. Every winter carried uncertainty. Would there be enough food to last until spring? No one knew. Despite the hardships, family was at the center of peasant life. Marriage often happened young. Children were born frequently, but childhood was dangerous. Disease, malnutrition, and accidents claimed many lives. Parents understood that not every child would survive to adulthood. Yet family bonds remained strong. After sunset, work finally slowed. Families gathered around the fire. Stories were told. Songs were sung. Simple games entertained children. These moments offered brief relief from the hardships of daily life. There was no television, no internet, no electric lighting, just the warmth of the fire and the company of loved ones. For many peasants, these evenings were among the happiest moments of the day. Life was difficult enough, but peasants faced another burden: taxes, and there were many of them. A peasant might owe part of their harvest to the local lord. Another portion could go to the church. Additional fees might be required for using the village mill, baking bread in communal ovens, or grazing animals. In some regions, peasants even paid taxes when they inherited land or married. After months of exhausting labor, much of what a family produced disappeared into obligations. This created a constant struggle: work harder, produce more, yet remain poor. For generations, countless families lived this way, not because they lacked ambition, but because the system itself made advancement incredibly difficult. Religion shaped nearly every aspect of medieval life. The church stood at the center of the community. Its bells marked the hours. Its festivals marked the seasons. Its teachings influenced how people understood the world. Most peasants could not read. The church became their primary source of education, stories, and moral guidance. Life was often harsh and unpredictable. Religion offered hope: hope that suffering had meaning, hope that justice existed beyond this life, hope that heaven awaited those who endured. Every village revolved around its church. Baptisms, marriages, funerals, the most important moments of life all passed through its doors. Whether rich or poor, nearly everyone lived under its influence. Despite the hardships, medieval life was not endless misery. There were moments of celebration: harvest festivals, religious holidays, village fairs, wedding feasts. These events broke the routine of labor. Music filled the air. People danced. Games were played. Food was shared. For a brief time, worries could be forgotten. Traveling entertainers occasionally visited villages. Storytellers brought news from distant places. Musicians performed songs that echoed through crowded marketplaces. These rare moments of joy mattered. They reminded people that life was more than work. Even in difficult circumstances, humans found ways to celebrate. Modern medicine did not exist. A simple infection could become deadly. A broken leg might never heal properly. Even a minor cut could lead to death. Disease was a constant companion. Villages often experienced outbreaks of dysentery, typhoid, smallpox, and countless other illnesses. People understood very little about germs. Many believed disease was punishment from God or caused by bad air. Life expectancy was low by modern standards. Although many adults could live into their 50s or 60s, high infant mortality dramatically reduced average life expectancy. Death was everywhere. Most peasants witnessed the deaths of family members, neighbors, and friends throughout their lives. Perhaps no event demonstrated this more than the Black Death. Beginning in the 14th century, the plague killed millions across Europe. Entire villages vanished. Some communities lost half their population within a few years. For medieval people, death was not a distant possibility. It was a familiar reality. For most peasants, life followed a familiar pattern. Born in a village, worked the land, raised a family, died in the same place. Social mobility was extremely limited. Yet it wasn't impossible. Some peasants became successful craftsmen. Others moved to growing towns and cities. A few accumulated enough wealth to improve their status. Wars, plagues, and economic changes occasionally created new opportunities. After the Black Death reduced Europe's population, surviving workers suddenly became more valuable. Labor shortages allowed some peasants to negotiate better conditions, but these cases remained exceptions. For the majority, life remained tied to the land. Generation after generation. When we think about the Middle Ages, we often imagine kings, castles, and knights. But those people represented only a tiny fraction of society. The true foundation of medieval Europe was built by peasants. They planted the crops, raised the animals, built the roads, maintained the villages, and carried entire kingdoms on their shoulders. Their lives were difficult, often unfair, sometimes brutal, yet they endured, and in doing so, they helped shape the world that eventually became our own. The next time you enjoy a warm meal, turn on a light, or take a day off from work, remember this. For millions of medieval peasants, those simple comforts would have seemed like unimaginable luxuries.